Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third session today. Glad you came back. From the last session, we got a bunch of feedback that said that you'd like to go a little bit slower and that you wanted to get into more detail. And so for this session, what we've done is I'm going to do a few minutes at the beginning, just talking about why this is also different, our experience in this. And then Paul, who you met last time, will go through in some detail using the same example, but using a few other examples of how you can get in and put in prompts and get some business tasks done. As we do that, one of the things that might be useful for you is to keep your computers or bring up ChatGPT on your computers. So as Paul is going through, you can try your own prompts. And sometimes he'll tell you what prompt to use, and sometimes you could just try your own and see what happens. Because I think last time he'd used the metaphor of swimming, that it's really hard to learn swimming by listening to a podcast or reading about it. And so you have to get in the water. And what we're trying to do here is to help you get in the water through the process. So let me just start with a quick overview. There's a lot that's been going on. With this, I'll share my screen just for 2 slides. So, I've been involved in companies that have been in the middle of changing technologies for the last 35 years or so. As this has happened, there's some patterns that come up. And we're all at the stage right now where we're trying to make sense of this moment. We're trying to say, what's different about it? Starting with cell phones, going on to the World Wide Web, going on to mobile and Web 2, and then cloud, HPC, and now a company called Physics AI that's trying to reinvent physics. And so as I'm looking at these things, there are a few things that strike me as I go back and say, what was it like to live through each of these changes? And the first thing I'd say is that almost everybody in the early stages of these technology shifts was wrong about the way in which this technology was going to change our lives or change business or change any of those things. And so we'll be making a set of projections, a set of conjecture over here, but I think the game is to be involved, and the game is to see how this develops rather than relying on any particular projection. So a few things that struck me was when cell phones first came up, people said these are networks, they're going to be network effects, and so the people with the strongest networks are going to be the ones that win, and that never happened. When the World Wide Web came on, the go-to phrase, including all the analysts, were talking about content is king. One of our early clients was Time Warner, who took that to heart, and they took all their magazines and put them on the web, literally pictures of their magazines. And so we saw that, what actually happened was content became really important, but it also became free. And so what shifted was not that content was not important, it was that content was available to everybody. And because of that, because supply went up so much, the price of it went down. And so a whole new group of content intermediaries came in. Same thing happened at that point when people started to connect in. People said that all the people with the connections would be the ones that win because they already had the network, and it was AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe, companies that we don't hear about anymore. And so this keeps going on. Today, when you look at what people are saying about AI, they're saying that the person who owns the data is going to win. It's not at all clear that that's the way it's going to work. We just don't know what the key competitive advantages are going to be. So if I go from there, I want to talk about 6 different things that are happening now that we haven't seen before, certainly not at this scale. And this sets a perspective as you're getting in. The first one is that we've never had a widely spread exponential technology before. And so when you think about exponentials, we think linearly as analytical people. Exponential is just completely different in the way that things get affected. So let me give you one example. Back in 2016, actually 2015, people were looking at the big test being whether a computer could beat a human at Go. Why Go? It's because it's so much more complicated than chess, which was the previous standard. And there are more moves in Go than there are atoms in the universe. And so you could not get to a strategy in Go by just brute forcing it the way that Big Blue had done with chess. In 2016, then DeepMind created AlphaGo and beat Lee Sedol, one of the greatest players ever. So once that happened, you looked at this and you said that was a combination of knowledge and algorithms and deep learning. And once they'd done that and they'd beaten the greatest player in the world, you say, how could they make that better? And what they did was they went and took away all human knowledge and had it just create a new program called AlphaGo Zero, and had that just learn by itself. Now, they then went from that to Alpha Zero. And in that, they also took away the rules of the game, where the program would just go in and figure out the rules itself and then structure itself. And so this became a step towards more generalizable intelligence. And what was interesting was the new program, Alpha Zero, beat AlphaGo, that beat the human champion, after 8 hours of training. If you think about that, it always blows my mind that they could create a program that would beat the smartest program that was created by humans after 8 hours of training. It then went on to beat the world champion in chess, another computer program called Stockfish, in 4 hours. And then it went on to beat the world champion in shogi, the Japanese version of chess, in 2 hours. And so you think about just the scale of learning that's happening there, and that's been going on continuously. So you say those are all games. That was 2017. In 2018, we went out and created AlphaFold 1, which was 50% better than the human programs that had been put in before that, all the programs before that. And the following year, AlphaFold 2 basically solved the problem of protein folding, one of the most complex problems in biology. So this rate of change that's occurring is something that is really different from anything we've seen before. All of this is shared. And so, again, we haven't had this. Imagine that I'm teaching a class, and I'm teaching the class, say, about, I don't know, calculus. And so when I'm doing that, I go back in and I say, okay, I've taught a lesson. There's going to be some students who really get it, some students who are confused, and a lot of people in between who've seen certain things. And that's the way humans learn. So you go back in and this class then goes out, and some people know a lot and some people know less. The big difference over here is that if I was teaching a set of programs, then the ones that were the best programs and got the essence of it would then transfer their knowledge to every other program. So every program would be as good as the best, or could be as good as the best. That, again, has not happened before, where there's the sharing of knowledge, where instantly when you have something that's better, everyone gets it immediately. Now, there are commercial considerations and copyrights and so on that come in to block that, but the technology allows for that to happen. The third thing is it's instantly global. So almost every other technology takes a while to diffuse across. If you think about ChatGPT, it starts off in the end of November. By January, there are 100 million people. Most of these people are around the world. So all of a sudden, you've got this technology that within 2 months is going across the world and available to anybody with a smartphone. Again, what that does is it starts to say that when you have a global technology like this, the rules of all the different parts of the world are going to be different. So Japan, just a couple of weeks ago, just said, one of the ministers there just said that copyrights are not going to apply for training data. In the US, there are a number of lawsuits now against people like Stable Diffusion, where people are asserting their copyrights. And so the rules for each of these things are going to be very different across. Europe has its own regime, China has its own regime, India is going to have its own regime. So the rules and what you can and cannot do, what you can use for training, all these things are going to be different, even though the underlying technology is the same. And the big difference that's occurring is that on the one hand, there's the protection of consumers, the protection of society against misinformation and so on. And then there is, on the other hand, the need for defense. The Defense Department coming in and saying this becomes a critical asset, and so we have to change that. This is an individual technology. So unlike, say, nuclear, which is often used as a metaphor for this, which is because it's exponential, because it can destroy the world. Over here, the control of the technology is with individuals to use it, and with corporations as individuals, again, not with governments. That, again, is a fundamental difference between this and nuclear, where in order to have a nuclear facility, there's a certain amount of infrastructure, therefore a certain amount of control that governments can assert. Over here, even though a handful of companies now own the major models, you can go to the dark web and buy a generative AI model for under $1,000. It's strategic. So what do I mean by that? It means that fundamentally the cost of doing many things changes dramatically. Cost of classification, the cost of creation of code, of writing, the cost of customization, you can have infinite personalization, and the cost of cognition as 4 C's. These things start to tend towards zero. And when something starts to tend towards zero, the supply explodes. And so in economic terms, what starts to happen is the complements become more and more expensive or become more and more valuable, though the core thing, because there's infinite supply, becomes very inexpensive. And so the dynamics of that become interesting and different from anything we've seen before. And then the final thing I'd say is that it's composable. And we're just beginning to see this. I talked about AlphaFold 1 at the beginning, the protein folding problem. The following year, DeepMind created AlphaFold 2. And what that did was, in the last 50 years that we've known about protein folding, all of the labs, about 500 labs, had decoded, got the protein folding structure for approximately 17% of human proteins. When AlphaFold 2 came on, within the first few months, it got 100% of human proteins, roughly 17,000 or so of them. And the following year, it did 220 million proteins, basically all proteins that exist in living organisms around the world. And so you think about the scale of that, it's mind-boggling. And what they did in order to go from AlphaFold 1 to AlphaFold 2 is they started to combine a set of the different AI technologies. And what you're starting to see now is the same thing happening again with a combination of technologies. So LangChain is one of the things that's coming out that allows you to combine things. So when you look at ChatGPT and you say it hallucinates, it has all of these problems with facts, all of these things now you can start to do is using the plugins, you can start to combine things in different forms. So I'm going to stop on that and then have Paul take us through a set of examples. In today's session, please ask questions in the chat. We'll answer them. At the end of the session, we'll finish in an hour, but we'll stay for another 10 minutes or so if there are questions. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Shakar. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Beyer. I am calling from Boston. It's wonderful to see all the different countries and opportunities out there. So I've been spending probably about good 200-300 hours with ChatGPT since January. I've done probably 30 to 40 large-scale training and a whole bunch of one-on-ones. So I've had a lot of time on it. And what I want to do today are two things. One is get everyone's basic questions answered. I want to be able to help us move 10 yards down the field, both on what it is in general and specifics on ChatGPT. And the second is I want to show you enough specific examples on ChatGPT, have you do it yourself, that you're inspired to go spend another hour or so learning the tool here. So at a high level, there's lots of different types of generative. So there's AI is a big category. Within AI, there's generative AI. And generative AI just means something comes in, an AI program, and something comes out. And there's a whole host of different types of generative AI. Text to text is what we're going to be talking about today with ChatGPT. But there's also kind of text to image. You may have heard of Midjourney or Dolly. There's text to video, which is just stunning. If you haven't looked at Runway and others, where you actually put in text and get video out, and a whole host of them. So generative means something comes in and comes out. And today we're focusing on generative AI just for text to text. Just a few terminology basics. So OpenAI, that's the name of the company. I'm going to keep going down really literal here for a while, guys. OpenAI is the name of the company. ChatGPT is the name of the product that this company made. Prompt or prompt engineering is simply what goes in the box. So if you're one of the 4.9 billion people in the world that use Google search, then you can use ChatGPT. That's what prompt. So you should not be intimidated by the word prompt engineering. There's a whole bunch of advanced things you can do, but anybody can come in and use ChatGPT or a similar type product. GPT 3.5 and 4 are the names of the versions. 3.5 came out last summer, 4 came out a few months ago. Conversational AI is sometimes a term to use, and a large language model, LLM, is a category of these type of generative things you're going to hear a lot more about here. A lot of different ways to access it. At a real high simplistic level, 1 trillion words, everything on the open internet was used as training data. A lot of that was unstructured data. That is put into a generative AI model by OpenAI. And that's kind of the base or foundation model. And then from that, a whole bunch of guardrails or trust and safety layers called different things, but these are additional rules that OpenAI and other companies add to it. So for instance, when 3.5 came out, you could actually go in and say, how many people could I kill for $1? And it would give you an answer. Now, if you come in, it'll block that from giving you an answer. So a whole bunch of things on child pornography and just kind of safety has been put in there. So we have the training data, the base model, the safety guardrail, and then it goes out to different applications. Today, we're going to be looking at the browser interface, but also go on APIs. Increasingly, they can start going down to other software and other AI-based tools. I encourage people to keep sending in questions. Our colleagues are monitoring it. A couple key important aspects. One important way is to understand this is an intergalactically sophisticated estimating machine. It is looking at what you put into the prompt and it's guessing the next word. There's not a calculation there. It's saying based on 1 trillion pieces of information and my understanding how humans think, the computer, think this is what you're actually getting to. So it's never going to be precise because it's estimating that, but it is really one of the challenges right now is explainable AI. We don't know why exactly all this sophisticated estimation is occurring, exactly why this particular answer comes out. We just know that it works. It's fast. You'll see people haven't seen it. It's very fast. In general, I tell people it's 80%. It's really 95, 98% accurate. It's just that the 2 or 3% that's inaccurate is very wrong. So inaccuracies or hallucination, those are the same things. There's a big bell curve, so the edges on both sides are inaccurate. And there's a lot of good discussions and technologies coming out to eliminate or at least reduce that quite a bit. But you absolutely should not be, you need to be aware that it will make up citations, it will make up characters in books, it will make up names of companies, it will make up facts. So it's really important to not confuse speed of getting an answer with accuracy. For a whole bunch of reasons, it will never be 100% accurate, and we can talk about that later, why.
Paul, quick question here. I think a few folks are interested in So this model has some guardrails around the safety and the ethical type questions. Are there any guardrails, or how do they think about the accuracy, right? Like if 2 to 3% is really wrong, but and the answers are, really far off, like how does someone prevent themselves from using that information, or, what are some things you've seen in that category?
Right, so it's a great question. So, what do we do about the inaccuracies here? There's a couple different things. One is there's actually something called temperature in ChatGPT and others, which says how much I should actually estimate the answers or not. Those are typically set out of the box of 0.8. So one way you can come in and actually say, I want you to, so for instance, now if you go in ChatGPT and say, tell me something beautiful, and you ask it 5 times, it'll tell you different answers. And if you get a chance, go do that right now. So that's one, is the tuning of the actual model itself. Another way people are looking at is actually the training data. So instead of training all the stuff on the internet, Reddit and all these other kind of crazy things, can you get a cleaner path? So a lot of companies who are building models for themselves are saying, I want to use an open source tool, not the closed source like ChatGPT, and only train on more clean data. Yet another way to reduce that is the technology like LangChain and other that Shakar mentioned, where you can put more of your own controls into the prompt. So LangChain will allow you to basically put in rules. It could be a couple dozen pages that's invisible to the user, but might say, here are exclusion rules and exclusion rules for that. So there's a whole host of ways to do it. The important thing is that in my view, is that to really understand generative AI is 100% new opportunity space than what we've seen the last 30 years in structured database type of applications. Those things are fantastic for always having the right answer all the time, but they're not very good at cognitive challenging things, having conversation with data, making movie scripts and others that you're going to see.
So I think, a couple of things I'd add to that. One is that when you ask it for facts, it'll often just make something up. So you could ask it, how many days are there between, today and October 17th? That's a very verifiable thing. It'll give you a number which may or may not be correct. So you look at it and you say, that's wrong. Tell me the correct number. It'll go back in and say, do it step by step. And it'll then give you the right number. And so you say, if it knew the right number, why is it giving me the wrong number the first time? And it's because it's just following a different pathway through the probability tree that's coming out at the other end. And so whenever you're asking for actual facts that are verifiable, you should go back and look at a search engine and then look at the source of the search engine. So that's the first point. There's a lawyer who submitted a whole brief with completely made up cases because he thought that ChatGPT was accurate, and got into lots of trouble and considerable amount of embarrassment. I think the second thing that's really worth emphasizing is that humans make stuff up all the time. And so, when we're comparing ourselves to this, I'll give you a couple of examples of this. There was a study that was done for a company called Vidya Health that does dental x-rays. And so they looked at a large sample of dental x-rays that were done by dentists. And what they found was the rate of error in it was between 30 and 50%. So on a random basis, you'd be almost as good as the dentist. It's just that we don't go and check. So if you go back and say, was this judge correct in deciding on this particular case? All you have to do is look at the Supreme Court and say, nobody knows, because 9 really smart justices will come up to different conclusions. And so the notion of, these things give you the truth. There are two problems. One is they don't give you the truth, but the second one is we don't know what the truth is in many, many circumstances. And so it's sort of pushing us against the edges of some of what we know as knowledge. If you say, who's the best actress in the world? There's no definitive answer to that. If you say who won the Oscar for best actress in 2020, that's something that has a clear answer.
Right. That's great. Thanks, Shakar. And the analogy I like to use is that Google's been a fantastic job for the last 30 years of teaching us and showing us how to find a needle in the haystack, the specific fact. ChatGPT, I'll argue, will help us find an area of the haystack and describe it. And typically you need 2 or 3 conversations. The last thing I'll do is I like to think about it. ChatGPT is 1,000 interns at your fingertips. At business, you would never ask an intern to write a letter to your top customer and then just send it off. So this is a tool that brings lots of insert clay to your desk quickly, and then you do the last mile, you do the last red zone. So a human in the loop, assisted AI, it's called a bunch of different things, but to me, that's the right way to think about it, rather than saying, I'm going to turn ChatGPT on just for my employees and customers.
So one of the things that you have to be careful about with the intern analogy is this intern has an English accent and speaks in perfect prose, and so and answers very quickly with a great deal of confidence, and is always unfailingly polite. And so our instincts are always to go back in and say they should be right, because anyone who can talk like that should, you associate something that looks articulate with also being true. And it really plays on some of these associations because of that, because it feels like it is very logically constructed.
Well said, Shakur. Out of the box, 2 other quick things. It's not learning in each from everybody else. It is learning within a chat session. I'll show you that, but it's not. It was trained up to September 2021. Unless using plugins from the other advanced tools, you ask it for the weather in Zurich or China or Boston here, it won't know because it wasn't trained on that. High level, you'll see here in examples here, but this is a broad technology. We've never seen a technology that's been so broad that can be used out of the box to solve such a wide variety of use cases, from marketing, sales, software development, and others. So let's get our hands on this thing. This is the fun stuff here. So I'm going to walk through a couple of things. So first, this is ChatGPT. It has a light mode and a dark mode. I've got dark mode on, but you can use whatever which one you prefer. Everything I'm due today is going to be on 3.5. So that's a free version around the world. GPT-4 is a little more advanced. It's got a whole bunch of benefits. It's a little slower, but that's the one that's typically, it's $20 a month here in the US and at varying prices around the world. And what the example I want to walk through is a hypothetical example of where we all work for a company and we want to develop coffee cups for left-handed people. And I'm going to start walking through different functions here. So one's example here, and I'm going to first put this in the chat. If you want to follow along on yours. So here on the, so that's a new chat, so like a new search section. You have the bottom of the thing here. So you are an expert in coffee cup market research. What are the top 5 product attributes most important to left-handed coffee drinkers? Kind of a big debate right now that's going around is, do you have to tell it whether it's an expert? Sam Altman, who's CEO of OpenAI, he suggested to do that. I find it's a good starting point, but if you do side-by-side tests, it only improves about 80% of the time. But these examples, you'll see it. But let's figure out what the 5 attributes are. So it's looking at those trillion words, trying to estimate what the answer is. And our 1,000 interns have come back with, ambidextrous design, handle placement, insulation, grip and texture, spill resistance. So pretty good first attempt. We can keep asking it questions, what are, and the thing it really shines for is literally asking it how you would ask a colleague, what other different types of spill resistant cups? And within seconds, it comes back and tells us that there's, I forget what the first one here, travel cups with mugs, snap-on lids, spill-proof, vacuum. And if I want to take this and send it to Shakar or someone, I can hit this little button up here. It's a clipboard, and I can go to Word and paste and have it right there, or same thing in email. So there's a couple different ways to share the results of your search. This is one of them. let me pause here for a second, Liang, if there's questions or people want to try this on themselves.
Yeah, there's one maybe more top level question, but I think it is related because between 3.5 and 4, the versions, right? Different parameters and different trainings and all of that. I guess maybe a two-part question. One is it fair to say words and parameters are generally used interchangeably? Like, should people understand it that way? And then two, a more specific question is based on your experience, like what makes 4 better or how is it better? Would love to kind of hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the high level parameters, tokens, input, I think for this level of discussion, we should think all that's the same stuff. That's just data coming into the training set. They are definitely technical differences, but I think at this level, we should think about those as interchangeable. On the 3 versus 4, they are absolutely different. GPT-4 is absolutely cognitively better than GPT-3 in a whole host of things here, but it's also much slower. So I always like trying the, so I'm on a webinar with 400 people.
Oh, I apologize. We booked this room from 3
I-
to 4:30.
Okay, John told me I could use it. Do you mind finding another room or?
We'll do our best.
Thank you, sorry. Sorry, guys. 4 is absolutely great for cognitive things. So I always start with 3.5 because it's faster. The benefits of paid is one is you don't have to wait. So I never get caught on there. Second is that it's cognitively more challenging. And third, you get opportunities to get some of the beta features are coming out. So in 4, you can do things like plugins, things like this unbelievable capability on Code Interpreter, where you can upload full Excel spreadsheets and others. So that's a value proposition of going to 4.
So, I think it's really a lot of the criticism has been around GPT 3.5. A lot of the sort of logical errors and so on, many of which have been corrected in 4. 4 is really one level above 3.5 on many, many dimensions of logic, of chains of reasoning, of things like that. And I talked about sort of exponential growth. 5 hasn't started yet, but there are so many other models that are being created that you can expect that these things are going to keep getting better and better at working things through.
Absolutely. I mean, at a high level here, these are, I call them closed source. So this is a private model put up by a private company here. There's also open source large language models, and those are soon going to be at the same capacity at 3.5. So it is really stunning, the explosion of capability that anybody can get and then train it any way they want and put in those guardrails. The other thing I want to highlight a little bit is we're using a very simplistic example here of using cups. So that's a physical product. There's huge transformational activity going on in certain industries. There's 4 in particular really being transformed by this technology. One of those is the movie industry. So if you haven't get a chance, I'd encourage you to check out. It's 5 minutes, a site called Flawless AI. And what they're doing is using generative AI to take a movie in English, get the lips to move and put it in local dialect to create tens of millions of dollars of new revenue streams. So I forget, there's like 100,000 movies that are English only. And now it's going to be very cost effective and time effective to start creating those in local languages around the world and testing that. So brand new revenue models and new sources for a subset of those companies out there.
So I think one other point about GPT 3.5 and 4 is that while there are all these other models out there, the first generation, if we count these as the first generation of these models in the public consciousness, has been largely large language models. If you go back to the example of AlphaFold, the way that they made the breakthrough was not by taking one model and making it a lot bigger, but by taking a number of different types of models and combining their output and allowing them to use the things that each of these models are good at. DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO and one of the pioneers in the industry, just I think last week made a statement saying they're coming out with a new model that's going to be a lot better, mostly because what they're doing is combining multiple models into one, multiple models with different strengths. OpenAI said the same thing, that they're not working on a GPT-5 right now. In fact, GPT-4 itself is a combination of 8 different models. Again, they haven't been very open, so this is people trying to reverse engineer what they're doing. So you're starting to see this movement towards much, much better models that combine different skills from different areas, and it's happening very, very quickly.
Thanks. Let's keep going and show you some other real tactical here. So market research starter is another one of the many use cases here. So we're back at our fictional company here. Let's do some market. So you're market research expert. What are the leading companies who sell coffee cups? So our interns are coming back. Dixie, International Paper, Solo Cups. That's great. One of the nice features is you can also get this data to display in a table here. So display results into a table. And boom, and now it's created a table. Here are the companies I mentioned earlier and the descriptions here. But we can go further. Add a column. As add a column for competitive differentiation. And now it's coming back, it's an intern guess, but here is the biggest competitive differentiation of these 6 companies here, 7 companies here. So it's a great way, again, to start thinking up. So now we know the key features of our product. Now we know some of the key competitors here. We got to build a business plan. So we got to pitch the car on the board and get some funding for this. So let's start a new chat. Outline a business plan for our left-handed coffee cups.
Paul, quick question here. When you're starting new windows, it doesn't know what you've talked about in another window, right? Or how does that work?
That's a great point. So this new chat or window, everything within this, it remembers. So if you want to refine something you've started, you can. So here's our outline, and maybe we want to refine this. This is what 11 steps. Let's say make this 7 steps. Now remember, this is all I'm saying is make the 7 steps. It interprets this meaning the same thing inside this window or chat, and it'll go ahead and come back with 7 parts of our business plan. You can also, I know we don't have enough time, you could also then convert this right over to slides. It's create a slide for each one of those. Within the text to deck, you can also then actually have it create VBS code. You can then upload to PowerPoint and actually create the slides. But for now, let's keep going to our marketing. So we have our funding. Shakar and his team approved our plan. Now we need to start thinking about our marketing. And one of the things that I'm going to start a new chat here that ChatGPT excels on, and which is creativity. And it's one of the areas that everyone thought computers would not excel on, and it does for a whole bunch of reasons. But here's a prompt. You are an expert at creating product taglines. Create 7 taglines for a coffee cup with left-handed people that emphasizes durability, ability to keep warm, unique design, and eco-friendly. And within seconds, we have 7 taglines. People who work with large advertising agency, this would be a $2,000 to $5,000 engagement for your advertising agency. We can look at that. We can refine further here. Maybe, it's shorten. These are too long. So shorten by 25%. Rewrite in Spanish. So lots of different ways for both our English and our Spanish speaking. We can go on at those Japanese languages and others. It's really, really impressive on the language side here.
Paul, quick question on the taglines. So you come up with this set of taglines, and let's say you want to use one of these. I guess, how do you know these aren't already being used? What if you have a competitor down the street who's running the same exercise as you, right?
Yeah.
Like, how would you think through that as an entrepreneur, I guess?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So again, it's 1,000 interns inside the thing. So you want to first, to answer that question, actually don't rely on an intern. So let's take this particular one and go search the internet for that. The second is you want to understand that the IP ownership right now of ChatGPT and other large language models like this are completely open and new territory. So currently today in America, what gets created in text to text or text to image is not protectable. It's not considered your own thing. So even if you come up with a marketing campaign, if you did it in paper and a whiteboard, you could get a trademark for that. Right now, and this is going to be debated through case laws and everything else, you can't. So one of the things that a lot of companies that we're working with, use this as internal brainstorming, but still have to go through the traditional aspects of it. On the last thing, on the patent side, one of the real challenges is that the current patent law is started as who does an initial creation is where the patent goes. And a huge issue right now in life science and biotech is if you use AI to go through 25,000 proteins and find two, that's AI starting that creative process and not scientists. And right now, that's not patentable. And so lots of different debates and approaches on that. But to answer your question, Leanne, is a great question here. We don't know if this is copyright or if it's violating anyone's trademarks or not. And we need to do that in our traditional tools like Jobs or like Google. Let's keep going. Keep the questions. Let me show you some more. It's fabulous at contracts. One of the 4 areas of professional services that get transformed, and legal is one of them. There's a startup called the Harvey, which has raised $15-20 million, and it's transforming the labor efficiency in law firms. But let's say for us, we need to create a distribution contract because we're going to sell through U.S. stores like Target and others here. So you're an expert in legal distribution contracts, write a distribution contract. Scope of agreement, pricing, payment, obligations, confidentiality. So it's looking at the trillion words and all the information about America or humans they can find. A whole bunch of that was a contract, blogs, and everything else. And from that, and this super sophisticated estimating tool, it's creating very quickly a contract. Obviously, again, you don't want to use this without. This is the intern contract, but boy, 99% of the time, this is a darn good start and will save you thousands of dollars on legal things here.
So
Another
I want to add the flip side of this is that imagine that you are upset with your neighbor about something, right? They put some garbage on your lot. You could write a whole case brief against them, a 40-page document that's in perfect legalese, and so on, and submit it to the court. And now your neighbor has to fight that. And so a lot of things in society that we depend upon friction, just who's going to bother to write this very complicated thing for something small, you scale all of that. So you scale the great stuff. You also scale the stuff that is really annoying and different. You can file, let's say you feel that global warming is hurting your business. You could file suits everywhere and create all of that with hardly any cost in that process. That friction that is built into society right now, where we've laws and processes and so on that count on that to not flood the system, you can now start to do all of that.
It's a great point. So it's one of the many new areas that we're in a new territory here. Back to real tactical things. So this is a contract. Another nice feature is if I want to share this with my colleague or my lawyer, over here on the this little arrow here, this is the share button. So I can just copy the link. It's a little slow for some reason. Copy this link and then just go right to my email. create a new email and boom, it's in there and I can send it to myself or Shakar or whoever else. And they can pick up and see that whole chat. And what you'll see in the chat is both the input as well as the output. In spirit of time, let me go to some more of the advanced cases here. Actually, this is an important one. It's really good at customization around starting to give it more facts. So we have a product, we have taglines. Now we want to start selling it, and we need some. I'm going to start a new chat. We need some customized languages here. So you're an expert in marketing and sales. Write a customized letter to Frank Sarasi, the home goods buyer at Target. Tell them about our highly unique left-handed coffee cups with a unique design. Tell them that you're committed to successful rollout in New England and can easily scale to support all the stores in 4 months. I've now seen some of these kind of intentional things go a page or two. So there's lots of space in here. And very quickly, you can now have a customized letter to Frank Sarasi based on the input we have. And all of this can be modified. So last year, a year ago, thinking about sending customized letters to every single 1 million customers based on their previous purchase history, their preferred language, the tone they have in the social media, with a PowerPoint that has customized pictures for the town would have been inconceivable a year ago because it's been cost prohibitive, is now absolutely with strong ROI. So what Shakar mentioned earlier, mass customization at an unheard of scale is one of the things we're going to see here. One of the things that's going on in education right now is be able to have whoever your favorite character is teach your third grader math. If they love Harry Potter, a Harry Potter character will teach them math. If they love dinosaurs, a dinosaur will teach them math because they learn better and they trust that particular personalized aspect for them. Let me pause and hear questions or have people try some of this themselves.
I think one question that's sort of related to this, Paul, is someone made the comment, you have access to this, but so does everyone else. So maybe instead of the more tactical stuff, like how do you then think about differentiation, right? You could send a mass customized thing, but so can I now. So I'm curious, like if either you or Shakar have thoughts on that.
So I think the quick thing is that is true. And so all of us will be getting a lot of very personal emails with very articulate language. And then what we will do is have our own ChatGPT reply to that. And so you're going to get, each of these things working through, and it becomes an arms race on how much more personalized you can get. But this applies to everything. So imagine a political campaign in which you want to go to every voter and look at their issues, the particular things that are their hot buttons, and design a letter for them. If you have the feeds from, say, Facebook, you can bring that in. You can then create this and do that all at no cost. Again, it's this notion of the friction in the system has prevented many of these things from happening because of the cost of doing it with humans. Now you can do it completely this way. And so everything goes up at that stage. And I think these are, everything that we're stating here as a huge benefit is only a short-term benefit. And then everyone sort of catches up and then it moves from there. And so what you have to do is think about this as the foundation model. And then on top of that, you build your own model that has your own expertise in it. And that uses this knowledge and then goes the next level up in that process. We'll talk about that in one of the following sessions about how all that works. But this level itself is pretty dramatic.
And we've seen this story before. I mean, go back, I'm dating myself, 30 years when email came out. But that was a function where everyone stepped up, but it was a horizontal and that quickly evaporated as something competitively differentiated. And the same thing's going to happen on these base models. Now, you may hear a lot of talk about prompt engineering. That's doing a lot more sophisticated prompts, 3, 8, 20 pages here. And that may be one way to drive some value here. Leanne, are there questions out there?
Yeah, I do, Paul.
Oh.
Hi, how are you? So can you train the model? And by that I mean, so for example, if you search for my name or my company name, it doesn't know who we are. If I had 100 people go and submit, do a prompt that included a lot of information about my company and about me, what do you think the chances are that I could train the models to later return information if I search for my company name?
From what I understand, Rosemary, 0.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's other solutions out there that allow companies or a business to build a kind of a separate database of their own stuff that can train. But think about this as a very fixed set of unbelievable capabilities that, to keep it simple, you can't train anymore.
Okay. I thought that might be the case,
But Rosemary, what you want to do is, let's say you wanted to have a model that knew your color preferences, your language preferences, your name, your style, and so on as a company. Companies like Jasper right now are using that, where they create a model that's on top of the foundational model, which we've just been seeing, and that knows all of this stuff. And so where this is going, so that everyone doesn't have exactly the same tools, is you start to train it. But you can also train it in, say, biology and terms, or physics, or any of the other topic areas which are narrower. Because what it is doing right now is it's taking the knowledge of the world and aggregating all of that to come up with this, but it has no point of view.
right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about within the ChatGPT model, not an add-on or a, custom AI platform.
The ChatGPT model is frozen as of 2021,
21,
and so you
right.
cannot do anything.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
I'm going to show just 2 more in terms of time, to get a little more advanced. So, So here's a new chat. We're staying in 3.5, and this is going to show you the interactivity capabilities here. So I want you to act as a purchasing agent, a large company. I will be the sales rep selling coffee cups. You, ChatGPT, will ask me questions, determine if I want to sell. You will only reply to me as a purchasing agent. Do not write all the conversation at once. I want you to only do the interview with me. Ask me questions and wait for my answers. Do not write explanations. Ask me questions one-on-one. So there's a lot of instructions there. And my first sentence is hi. So how may I assist you? Are you interested in selling unique coffee cups? Can you tell me more about the unique features here? This can go on and on here. I won't just share the times, but this is a great way to show a next level where you can start having a dialogue to train your employees. You can have a dialogue for hiring manager. You can have a dialogue for a board presentation. So this starts showing some of the cognitive capabilities of this tool.
I also want to just emphasize, when Paul was doing that, if you think about the way that this prompt is written, it's exactly as if you were talking to an intern and you're trying to give them very specific instructions on how you want them to behave over that period of time. You could also say, speak to me as if you were William Shakespeare, and it would come back in iambic pentameter. But you could do any of these things, but you have to be very, very specific on what you want, and then you get different results. It's going down a different pathway. So if you said, write this as if you were writing code, it would give you a very logical structure. And that's where prompt engineering comes up, where people are learning how the models work and how to get the best results from them for a particular set of tasks.
Exactly. And a little bit like the internet, where the constraint is our imagination, not technology. People may have seen where you have a news article and say, rewrite the news article leaning left, rewrite the same article leaning right, rewrite the article with a neutral political point of view. So let me show, I think we're going to share all these prompts. There's a lot more here. I want to just show one more to show the cognitive. You can have a web design. It's X-Killer for software development here. So there's one there if you want to look at. The one I want to show for this Harvard audience is a cognitive capability, something you actually might give to an MBA student or a new college grad. So here, create a SWOT analysis, so strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the plastic and metal coffee cup market in the United States. Afterwards, add analysis using Michael Porter's 5 forces. So folks don't know, that's a strategy thing that came out of the Harvard Business School. And I'll go back to the top. So this is market analysis. So here's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And then again, I gave it the same prompt. I was asking the thing here, and here's the 5 forces. So threat of new entrants, bargaining power of buyers, threat of substitutes, competitive rivalry. So this is starting to take something that's even more complex than just doing taglines and starting doing basic analysis, maybe even for HBS cases, but certainly for different markets and everything else. So I'm going to stop there, Shakar, and I'll hand it back over to you, but hopefully I've inspired you to understand the unbelievable transformative capabilities of this. I would inspire you to spend at least an hour more doing yourself, finding a use case that you know, so you can come to your own point of view if this is a transformative or not.
So, what Paul just did here was take Michael Porter's 5 forces. You could go to, virtually any book that's been published before that. So you could say, here's this person's model for how to lead a great life. What I want you to do is to take my pieces and put it into that model. And so any of those things are possible to do, and it's remarkable what it does as a first step in that process. And again, the best analogy that I've seen over here is that of an intern. But the other one that's going around is, think about McKinsey in your pocket, right, without the cost. It can go back and do a bunch of things, and sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. But you have this whole analytical capacity in there. And then from this base, what we are starting to see is a whole host of new products. Some have more constraints, some have less constraints. Some are targeted at physics, some are targeted at creative writing. But we have this explosion of things that are starting up. But in order to make that work, you first have to really get a sense of how the mechanics of how this actually works. And you get that by trying things, and then you'll find that certain things work well and certain things don't. So we're almost out of time. We'll stay here for another 10 minutes or so, just answering questions as they come up. But we'll